Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, your official podcast of the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm over at the Convention Center Radio Row for Super Bowl week, and Mr. Jim Eichenhofer back over in our facility studios over there on campus. Well, Wes Johnson is going to be joining us here shortly, as he's got a busy week here as well, as the team continues their 4-game road trip. Game 2 against the Denver Nuggets, game 2 of the road trip. That's coming up later on tonight. Back on Monday, game 1, 125-113 was the final. Denver with the win. Trey Murphy had 41 points. This is what it sounded like on the Pelicans Radio Network.
Chest it over to Murphy. Quick trigger three. Yes, again. And that was deep. Left of the top. Murphy is just absolutely feeling it. He's got 10 points already, and we're tied at 21. Strother, dump it down, intercepted by Messi, intended for Jordan. Now Z running the floor. Zion head of steam, splits defenders and lays it in. That is a definite ask, and ye shall receive. 41-34, Zion's got two straight buckets in the paint, 4 points. Up top, deep three straight away, Trey Murphy. Good. And you've cut it to 10. Kick it to Murphy, steps to his left, another straightaway three. You cannot be serious, Kenneth Murphy III. My goodness gracious. Murphy's got 29, 14 points in the quarter, 7 made threes all told. On an absolute inferno. Trey off the curl. Fake the pass, take another three. Why not? Deep and down straight away. 32 for Murphy. It's a 7-30-point game of the year. He had 8 made threes against Boston. That was a season high. He's got 8 more tonight. Shovel it to Murphy. Murphy front court right. Left-hand dribble drive. Show and go. Lefty scoop is in. Left of the rim and down. Murphy again. 37 points. Timeout Mike Malone and the Nuggets. Trey Murphy. What a performance. And you have cut it back down to 10 again. Picked off but knocked into the backcourt. McCollum ran it down. Shot clock at 7. CJ stop pop left wing 3. Got another one. Mr. President has 15 in the quarter. And it's 111-103. 28 overall for CJ. Under 5 minutes left in Denver. Jalen Pickett in. And to Porter, now above the elbow. Joker, whip it to MPJ for 3. Dagger. Left wing 3. Porter a season high, 7 threes and 32 points.
Again, a tough loss, but again, Jim Eichenhofer, Trey Murphy, back-to-back games, 40-plus points, back-to-back games, 8 3-pointers made. It's not that we can't come up with other topics, but I feel like every podcast we're talking about Trey Murphy for good reason.
Yeah, we have other topics, but I think this is the best one by far. So, yeah, you got to be really appreciative of the way that he's played lately. And by the way, Gus, you mentioned that we're in 2 different locations. They would not give me security clearance to get in there. So, no, I didn't apply, but they probably wouldn't have. I don't know what my reason for being there would have been, but nonetheless, you'll be able to tell later in the show that we're in 2 different locations. It's a little tougher to communicate that way, but we will get through it. But no, going back to your point about Trey Murphy, I mean, he's been one of the best individual stories in the NBA lately, but I think it's funny because, we're talking about it, and the people that are closely following the NBA, like super closely, are talking about it, but it feels like he's done this during a stretch where you would get the least attention possible for scoring 40 points in 2 consecutive games. Obviously, they lost the 2 games, and that's a factor as well, but just there's so many things going on in the NBA right now with the trade deadline and the Luka deal. It feels like I was kind of wondering how many points would Trey have to score for it to become, like a widespread discussion point across the NBA, maybe like 80. If he had 80 in a game, I think maybe then he would make the top of the Sports Center news. But right now, there's so many other things going on. But in some ways, I feel like it's kind of appropriate if you think about it. Trey Murphy was a late bloomer. He didn't get recruited a ton when he was going into college. He played for Rice,
Yeah.
and then he was 17th pick in the first round of the 2021 draft. So he's been kind of an under the radar guy throughout his basketball career, and now he has these two huge games, and we love it, and we're talking about it. But I feel like if he keeps this up, though, I think a lot more people around the league will be talking about, hey, this Trey Murphy guy is come up a level in his game.
Well, like I said, I kind of alluded to it on Friday. And, when a game gets played or you're on national TV or whatever, and for good reason, right? I mean, there's a photo of Zion. There's a photo of Brandon Ingram. There's a photo of C.J. McCollum. There's a photo of those guys. And I at some point that he may be getting his photo, in preview.
Yeah, that's a good
Trey Murphy.
That's a good question.
Pelicans take on so-and-so. Because look, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm not saying that I was ahead of the curve on this, but he can just score from all the different levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can get to the free throw line. He's really good there. We're seeing him be able to attack when that three ball isn't shooting. That's a sign of growth and maturity. I love hearing after games he isn't happy that he dropped 40. He wants the win. I love hearing, hey, I know I need to be consistent. That's something you've brought up too, that, we need to see volume of shots when you see his impact. And here's the other thing. Maybe my other case or evidence for it is we have seen this year. I've asked you in the studio at the Smoothie King Center after a game, whether he got hurt or he missed a game, there was an impact on the team, on the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's games where Zion played or CJ played or DeJounte played. Like when, Trey Murphy went out or he got injured or rolled an ankle or something, like the Pels offense was like, they couldn't score.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another really important element to what he brings to the table too, and something that we've seen throughout his whole career, is that he just pairs well with other players. If you look at the team's stats, for example, people have talked about in the past few years, when he's on the court with Zion, the team does great. When he's on the court with Brandon Ingram, the team does great. It just seems like part of it is just the way that he can space the floor. He's such a valuable guy to have on the court when you have the number of players that the Pelicans have who are kind of ball dominant, that they have the ball in their hands a lot, and some of them are more isolation players. To have that outlet valve of Trey Murphy is worth so much that, I think that's just a huge part, other than maybe the analytics. Sometimes you can't really measure some of that, but he's just an easy guy to fit pieces around. So I think that's another thing that makes him really promising as far as the future, that that no matter what direction you go with the rest of the roster, it seems like it's easy to say this guy's going to play well with whatever combination of other players you have on the court.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll see what takes place here the rest of the road trip, and more importantly, how teams may start playing them, as we move forward past the All-Star break. Our conversation with Wes Johnson, that is up next. Of course, he is the analyst for the television side of things. He and Aaron Summers host on those road games, and imagine that. We talked to him about Trey Murphy. Here's our conversation. All right, time now to bring in Mr. Wes Johnson, analyst over for the television side of things on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. You can catch him and Aaron Summers coming up tonight and the rest of the road trip and every road game. Wes, good afternoon to you, man. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Trade here, trade there, trade everywhere. Come on, be honest, man. When you heard the Luka to the Lakers, AD to the Mavericks trade, were you like me and Jim and thought, Shams, everyone, he got hacked. There is no way that trade took place. I need initial reaction from you, and then Jim's going to ask you, like, basketball-wise about the trade. But I want to know what went through your mind when you saw that, man.
I mean, honestly, I heard it, and I immediately text him, like, are you bleeping serious? Did this really happen like this? And he was like, yeah. Talking to AD, I reached out to him because friends with him, and I want to make sure, like, is this for real? And he was like, yeah. And sat in the living room. My boys came downstairs and I asked, I'm like, did you hear? And they were like, what? I'm like, AD and Luka got traded for each other. And they were like, what? They looked at me like, no way. They were like, this doesn't even happen you can't even do that on the 2K on the video game. They were block it because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So initially for them to even say that, and then the world to be in so much of a disarray and awe, like how and why now. So I was initially woke up like in shock, still was in shock the entire day. Like, wow, this is like craziness. This is crazy work. Like, how did this even come about?
Yeah, Wes, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on this, or Gus, if you have any thoughts on this, but one of the things that I thought about after watching some of the coverage of the trade in the last few days is people talk a lot over maybe the last 10, 15 years about how the NBA is so small in terms of the connections between the players. You guys
Sure.
you guys know each other so well. But one of the things that I thought that is something to kind of ponder and think about with this situation is, are we getting to the point too where we also have to think about the executives, the GMs also have some of these personal connections, and that
For
that
sure.
maybe that's going to be more of a factor going forward than it has been in the past.
I mean, if you're breaking that down and looking at it, you look at Nico. He was head of Nike. He was running Nike side. And then you look at Rob. All his clients were big Nike guys, starting with Kobe. And then you see AD, you see LeBron. All these guys I have touched one another, have been around one another in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So, yeah, if you're looking at that side of it, yes, that network and that circle is very, very, very small. And when you get into the nitty gritty and pinpointing and finding that out, because this just doesn't happen by chance. This just doesn't happen by the course of a couple of days. Like, this is something that's been brewing, and those two guys that were ahead of it, meaning Nico and Rob, they were the ones that were initially making the deal because they have a lot of history there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is interesting how that part of it has come into the equation more. And I don't know necessarily if that's a great thing because, you want to kind of push aside some of the personal aspects when you're making a decision as big as this. But nonetheless, just curious too, based on what you said earlier, Wes, what was Anthony Davis's reaction to you? I mean, I would imagine he probably had 8,000 text messages on his phone. Did he get to respond to you, or did he just kind of be like, "Hey, man, this is
Shock.
crazy. I don't know what's going on"?
This is shock, brief.
Really?
I mean, just letting them go through it itself. I mean, honestly, I think it's going to be shocking in anybody. People I've been around that have been traded. It's always something that you're thinking about outside of basketball. You're thinking about the family aspect. You're thinking about the routine. You're thinking about the schools. You're thinking about this everything that comes with this being in a city for multiple years. So outside of leaving a team, you're leaving behind family, friends that you basically bonded and grew something with. So that is something that you have to go through and deal with yourself and with your family. But we're looking at it as a basketball side and how it shook the world and everything. But him as a human, him as a man, a father, and that is something that he's going to have to like navigate and deal with outside the lines.
Wes,
What was it?
I saw the
Sorry.
reports. Sorry, Jim. I saw the reports about, LeBron getting the phone call at dinner and things of that nature. Is that the most shocking aspect of it, that something this big, apparently by what you're telling me, the players found out?
Yeah.
When we all found out, you know what I'm saying? Like, no rumblings, no pull you aside. Hey, man, look, we love you and stuff, but this is kind of what we're, just give you a heads up and stuff. I mean, I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you guys saw this, Jim. I think it was last night or 2 nights ago on Monday. Anthony Edwards was joking in the locker room where he looked at his coach or he looked at the GM and said, "You better let me know before you trade me."
All right.
Is that the most shocking aspect, Wes, where it really does look like those guys, those names,
Yeah.
didn't know?
Yeah. I was in college. I went to the Nike camp. I went to Vince Carter camp. And it was like 7 of us that were there and invited there. So we're doing our thing. And then BC was at the other end towards the end of the camp and had to start screaming and cheering. Like, what are you cheering for? I guess he's ready for us to get out the gym or something. We done working out. So he's cheering. And then we're like, yo, what happened? He like, I just got traded. And we like, what? What do you mean you just got traded? Like, he said, I just got a text that I just got traded. We're like, you didn't know? He was like, no, they did. I just found out right now. And I was like, he's good. That's when he got traded to Dallas at that time. And I'm like, what? In my head, I'm in college still, finna go back. I'm thinking like, that's how the business work. And he was like, yeah. And it's a spur of the moment. You never know. You could be doing at an event. I heard people got at team events got traded while they were there. Harrison Barnes was probably the craziest. He was traded during the game. So
Yeah.
it's stuff like that that happens like at the spur of the moment. And it's just like, you know what? Thank you for your service. It's business, and go about your day.
You know, Wes, that brings up to me, I wanted to ask you about this because I looked through your career page on Basketball Reference and I noticed that there was only one time in your career that you were traded in February, that you changed teams
Yep.
during that part of the season. And as people, a lot of people that followed the team closely would remember, that actually was from the Pelicans, that you were traded from the Pelicans right before the trade deadline. And
Yep.
I remember back, I was actually, I wanted to ask you just the details that you remember from that. And this is funny because if I remember correctly, I think we were in Los Angeles. I was traveling with the team at the time, and we were on the bus after a game, and I saw, I think it must have been Woj at that point, tweeted that you were part of a trade. And I remember looking back, and you were on the bus at the time. So you were like a few rows behind me. What do you remember from that?
All the players, I remember all the players and Coach Mike Penberthy was on the staff,
Hmm.
and he came back there and he was like, man, I hate to see you go and all this. And I was like, looking at him like, what are you talking about?
Oh,
Like, what are you
wow.
talking about? And then I looked and I'm like, and I got a text from my agent right after he was saying this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then what was weird, I flew back with the team and then left when I landed to go to DC. So I'm on the plane and it's all awkward because now I'm not a part of the team anymore.
Right,
So
right.
it's one of those instances where it's like, you know what? It's a part of it. It was weird in the dynamic of I'm traveling with the team still, but I'm not a part of it. And everybody knew. So it's like one of those things where everybody's looking at you. It's like, do I have something on my face? Like, what's going on? But
Yeah.
like just
Hmm.
been traded from here to go there. So it's a part of the business, and the business is not kind in that way. Then you got to look at it as that. You can't look at it as personal. I mean,
Hmm.
because everybody's going to do what's best for them and their organization. And if they think that you're a betterment, if you're better going on to a different team, so it's just looking at it like that. So when you suit up and go there, do what you do best and perform.
Yeah, and this would have been 2019. So this February 2019. So this would have been, um, obviously a different regime and not the same group of people that are in place now. But I was wondering, so basically the way that you explained it and described it, you didn't know at all. You had no idea until it was reported, correct? By, like
Right.
national media and people like that. Um,
Yep.
as a player, I feel like this is something that has been talked a lot about during the Mavs Lakers trade, and something that Gus you just brought up too. Of a lot of times the players don't know anything about it until it happens. I mean, as a player, did you go through trade deadlines where you were trying to block that out? I mean, did you would you prefer have been kept in the loop, or was it better to just not, like, don't tell me anything, just if I'm traded, then tell me, obviously, but otherwise I don't want to even hear about it, kind of thing.
Uh, in those situations, like I was fortunate enough when I first got traded to Pelicans, I had a good rapport and with the Clippers, and I know they had traded off everybody before that. CP was gone, Blake, DJ, JJ's, all these guys were already free agency traded off, and they had left. And I was the last like Mohican of that team, last
Mm,
one standing.
yeah.
And I remember them coming to me with like, you know what, we're thinking about moving you. So for me, that was a heads up during that time that I got, but that's rare that it happens. And like I was highly appreciated because it wasn't spur of the moment randomly. But yeah, like during that time, you want to know because you're going about everything like normal. Routine is warming up, whatever the case may be, going about your day, and then boom, you get the news. I mean, some of it can be highlighted when you wanted to, like I'm giving you a heads up because it happens. You might get a call, right? We might get a call from anybody right now that's saying somebody got traded. It's just one of those things that business is moving, stuff is happening, and it's like I can't just call the person and let them know. This idea might come across the table, come across an email or whatever, and it make sense. And I can't notify that person at that time, only when it happens. So
Sure.
it's just a
Yeah.
part of the business. I mean, you want to keep stuff in, not say secrecy, but you want to conduct stuff accordingly.
Did
And I guess,
you?
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Gus.
No, I was gonna say, and I guess with that, that's the one thing that you probably can't wait for it to sort of end and then move on again and kind of reestablish, the rest of the season and things of that nature, right? Because I mean, you're doing what we're
Right.
doing now. I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking to see what's
Right.
happening and kind of the thing, right? So you're waiting for that deadline to hit as well.
Exactly. Because it's during this time, it's nerve-wracking because every moment, every minute, you're waiting to see what happened, who's moving, who's doing this, and it's like, wow, okay, how's that dynamic going to change their team? How that dynamic is going to change the course of the conference? So you're looking at it at every minute, like notification popping, like who's gone now, who's moved now. So it's one of those things like this is like high priority, high and like nerve-wracking, nerves or everything. Players don't want to think about it, but you never know. You never know what is going on up in that office that might be betterment for the team, and you never know if you're on the clock or not.
Wes, it seems like over the course of your career too, the information in the NBA, the speed of it really accelerated to the point where, by 2019, everybody is constantly checking for updates and stuff like that. I mean, besides the Pelicans team that you were on, that was in a lot of upheaval that season, I'm sure you were on other previous teams that had names floated around in rumors and that kind of thing. Was it what for you individually? Did you just try to stay off your phone and just try to not pay attention to that, or was it the kind of thing where it's just unavoidable because everybody's talking about it 24/7?
After a while, it gets to the point where you can control what you can control. That's how they're control. Like if they feel like they're going to move you and they want to, for whatever case may be, like that is their prerogative. Only thing you can control is you and yours. So you making sure you show up on time, doing what you need to do, going and playing whatever minutes if you're starting, being productive as you can, because that's all you can control. If you start worrying about that, you're messing with the product, and that's yourself. So you want to make sure your mind and your focus is focused on you and making sure you're doing the best that you can while you're out there. Because if they trade you, that's how you're control. If they trade you or not, you're either going to be at the team, they trade you, you're going to be on the next team. So it's like you have to be mind, body, and soul in your body to make sure that you're going to be able to be the best person that you can be whenever the numbers call.
Let's talk a little bit about the Pelicans now. Obviously, as we record this, we haven't heard any news, but I think a guy that we can safely say is going to be here for a long time is Trey Murphy. And based on, I know during your career, Wes, a lot of people knew you as a kind of a shutdown defender, somebody on the wing that was tasked with guarding some of the best players in the NBA and some of the tough scorers. From what you've seen of Trey Murphy, I mean, what do you think of just the way he's ascended and just made himself into just a more well-rounded player and now somebody who's really dangerous at the offensive end?
For me, watching it and having the pleasure to be here, from seeing the jump from the last year scouting and watching him to this year, I love his confidence. I love his assertiveness. One, you can say, yes, he gained weight, he got stronger, the ball handling. Like, yes, he did that. But for me, the confidence and his assertiveness of being out there and trusting himself with the work that he put in. So him being able to go out there and do what he's doing behind closed doors when nobody's watching and trusting in that and doing that live action, for me, that's all the testament for him gaining the maturity level and being able to do that and apply that to the game, because everybody works out in the summer. Everybody does it. Everybody gets stronger. Everybody puts time in. But when you get on the floor, the lights are different. Lights are brighter. People are actually in front of you now, trying to stop you. But him being able to magnify that in a way where he's being able to be so productive, where we're looking at it as like, wow, is this, like you're saying, like a breakout season for him? Yes, it is. But now we're looking at it like, this is you now. We're expecting this now. The expectations of your play has grew way beyond our wildest dreams of seeing him from the previous year to now. So him being able to do this on a consistent basis, for me, that's the maturity level outside of him just being able to just rely just solely on his work.
I wrote about this a little bit yesterday in an article on Trey Murphy, just the fantastic stretch that he's had lately. But I mean, one of the things that has always stood out to me over the 4 years he's been here is how much time we see him practicing and shooting. I mean, how much of that do you think is the reason why he's at this point now where he's broken out and he's having this? Because I think of a lot of times you think of players who need to work on their game and they're the ones that you think are going to be in the gym all the time. But I mean, he's in the gym. From what we see, it seems like he's in there as much as anyone. And you look at his stats and you're like, this guy doesn't even need to be in there. You know what I mean? But how impressive has that been? The fact that just what you see from his work ethic.
The work is going to show. That's one thing that's going to happen. Like, you can't cheat the game, and he's definitely not doing that. And him being able to show that, and you're seeing it, that's why we're talking about him right now. I mean, he's putting in time. He's putting in like the energy and the effort to like cultivating this craft, as everybody wants saying. But this is him loving the game. You hear Kobe saying, "I'm putting in what you're going to get out." So he's doing all the things that he needs to do to be a great player, and he's going trending in the right direction. It's only up from here. So you're looking at it like, wow, he can get better. Yes, he can, in every aspect of it. He can get better as far as drawing more fouls. He can get better with mid-range game. He can get better in the floaters. But the thing is, he's going to continue to work and do that. And him being able to be on a level where he's doing it now and we're enjoying it and loving it, it's like exciting to see. So we're seeing like the ground level of him breaking out into a future All-Star.
One of the things that we've talked about recently with Antonio Daniels and John DeShazer is they both have expressed to me or to us at times how frustrating it is that they feel like the opinion sometimes about players, whether it's when they come out of the draft or after they've been in the league for a couple of years, is that people sometimes try to put a cap on how much they can improve. You know, we see a lot of times where people say that if you played 4 years in college, your draft stock goes down because the opinion has been more towards, the teams want to draft somebody who's 19 as opposed to somebody who's 22. But I mean, what's your perspective on the fact that, Trey Murphy is 24 years old, which is ancient by, NBA terms as far as this stage of his career. He played multiple years in college. I mean, did you see guys during your career do this where it's like, maybe it doesn't happen in their second year where that's the year where they make the biggest jump, that sometimes it is year 4 or year 5, the way it is with Trey Murphy?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the team that he was on. I mean, and how the league has trended. And I think that for him getting the opportunity now, like, God works in mysterious ways. Like, we unfortunately have a lot of injuries, and him being able to being in a situation where we're pushing him to be offensive minded, him to be somewhat of a focal point. So those years before that and the years that he had in college, and then coming into this situation where he is now, the work that he's put in, it means something. So yes, you can say a young guy, yes, he has a huge upside as far as the years that he can get in game because he's younger. Yes, that makes all the perfect sense. But if you have a guy that's already polished and been through stuff and can still have the mindset of continuing to work and get better, it doesn't matter the age, because the game is the game. If you're going to continue to put in time, regardless if you're 19, 24, 27, continue to get better and still get, I would say, improve yourself in a way where you want to continue to be the best. It doesn't matter, because if you look at all the Kevin Durant's, the Jimmy Butlers, Bradley Bills, and like name the superstars and the guys that are still relevant, they're 30 plus years old and they continue to get better each year because they still put time in, regardless of the age.
Yeah, Wes, I think the one thing that really has stood out to me that I've brought up in our podcast, and it's something that we touched on this past Friday in our radio roundtable, is I think a sign of growth is twofold in this aspect of it, how teams are now playing. Trey Murphy, trying to defend him, take him out of things and defend him. And that's something that you have to learn to grow, right? Now you're seeing doubles. Now they're game planning towards you, things. And the other thing, too, is what he said back on Monday after that game, too. Another 40-point performance. That's cool. but we wanted to win. I love that, right? I mean, I love
Yes.
players that hate losing more than love winning, if that makes any sense, and I think
Yes, it
you're
does.
doing that because I can't teach that either all that or not. And he also said consistency on Monday after the
Mhm.
game in the press game, in the presser, that he understands in this game you have to be consistent and you have to do that, not 40-point games every game, but maybe he is that guy. But that's those two things really stand out to me as far as growth.
Yeah, the first thing I would hit on is the consistent side of it. Like you're saying, yes, the 40 points are like, wow, man, that's incredible. Like 40 points back to back, that's great. But being consistent in how you're playing and how you're doing it is that not that 20, he's averaging 22 now, like him being able to continue to be effective in a way that he's making winning plays. Yes, he's getting double teamed now. That's out of respect of his game and all that. Like, yes, now people are focused in on you. Now they're paying attention to you in a way that you earned that. Now, how are you going to be productive now? How are you still going to be consistent in your play that you're still going to be having, not say a 40-point night, but impact the game in a way of we're still like, wow, you're going to be making more assists. Defensively, how are you going to be impactful now? Because now the teams are really honed in on you. And now you're that guy on our team now that we can lean in on to be that person and do that.
Final thing for you, man. Back on our radio roundtable, JD, Graf, and Jim on Friday, I asked them, is Trey Murphy an all-star player, all-star caliber player? Can he be an all-star? Can he be one of the better players in the league?
Yeah, that is like for sure. With me, 6'10", able-handed, athletic, can shoot the ball from everywhere on the floor. Yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. Like he's a gym rat. He loves the game, wants to continue to improve. The fact that teams are like focused in and double teaming you now, you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing. So if he continues to do that and continue to be assertive and continue to be aggressive and mindset and be confident, yes, he's an all-star.
Jim, final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like the consistency thing is something that is going to be really interesting to watch. I mean, I've noted before, just for example, when he had 41 points the first time against Portland, which was a couple of years ago, 2 games later, he only took 8 shots in that game. So I feel like he's definitely getting to the point now where he knows that there's no reason for me to not take a bunch of shots. But what's impressive about that too is he's doing it so efficiently. He's scoring 40 points on 20 shots.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He is more aggressive, but it's not like I need to get up 30 shots to get my points. I mean, he's doing it in a way that is just so helpful towards the team and the offense being effective.
Yes, it is. I mean, now that's another thing you say growth. You know where your shots are coming from.
Yeah.
You know yourself now. You're not just not going out there just shooting just to shoot. You're doing it like say in a way where it's still in the means of the offense and in a means of your aggressiveness. Like you're not taking bad shots or ill-advised shots. You're actually attacking, getting to the foul line. So that's for me the maturity level from the last year to this year. That's my like all and like I love it. I love to see it. So for him to continue to build and grow off this, yeah, yes. To your point, Gus, yes, he's an all-star.
Yeah, I just think of Monday, the drive down the baseline dunk that he had here on Friday against the Celtics, or the reverse lay-in on Monday, free throw line scoring, dunking, 3-point shooting. That's it. I mean, you're the multi-tool player now, and he's getting better on the defensive side. So, hey, Wes, a couple of late games here. Be sure to bring some coffee. I know Aaron Summers over to my left here as we're live at Radio Row. It's a long day, so you might have to shake her a little bit just to keep her awake over the next one. Then we got a 9
Yeah, I'll bring some food.
Sounds good, man. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. All right, thanks to Wes Johnson for that here as well. As I was interesting, not just his thoughts on Trey, but to get a player's perspective of what the NBA trade deadline is. Not just being around the trade, being traded. Broke a little news there. Apparently he has AD's number, and he found out immediately what happened.
Yeah.
I would have loved to text him because let's be honest, I would have loved to see that response, right? Like, dude, does this really happen? And to hear that just boggles my mind because, man, apparently they found out and were just as surprised as we were.
And he must be pretty close with him if he got any response at all, because I can't imagine how overwhelmed his phone, Anthony Davis's phone, must have been at that point when everybody was trying to get a hold of him. So yeah, that was it was interesting to hear, the player's side of it. And Wes is he's a pretty kind of laid back guy. I just thought it was funny. I definitely wanted to ask him about the trade from the Pelicans because I literally was there when that happened, and I didn't remember the part about the flight back, but I can imagine how awkward that would be the way that he described it.
Yeah, that would be a little strange here as well. So, and obviously it is Jim Wednesday, which means we have to do this.
All right, y'all. Now it's time for Western Conference Wednesday. Mr. Eichenhofer will tell us whose stock is up and whose stock is down. So let's get started. Jim, what is our team to keep an eye on for this week?
Well, Mallory, it's good to see that they got you into the convention center today for the
She
NFL
got
media.
access, but you didn't.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. No, the team to watch is going to be the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, this is a pretty easy call. They're now 26-25 in 11th place in the West, so they've really dropped down quite a bit based on some of the losses they've had lately. And obviously, Anthony Davis is going to be making his Mavericks debut at some point in the near future. The last I heard was it's possible he could play Thursday night in Boston. But either way, if he plays or if he doesn't play, the Mavericks are the team to watch, partly because their schedule coming up is really interesting. They have the game against the Celtics. Saturday, they host Houston. And then Monday, they host Sacramento, which is a team that's right with them in the play-in tournament race. So Dallas Mavericks, I think it's not going to take much to convince people to keep an eye on them. I think everybody's going to be tracking them and the Lakers very closely over the next set of months, just based on that trade just happening. As far as stock up and stock down now, Gus, I could have easily picked the Mavericks for stock down, but I didn't want to kick them when they're already down and they're already going through the kind of thing where everyone is throwing insults at them. So for stock down, I actually went with the Houston Rockets, and I know recently they were the stock up, but they're actually now on a 4-game losing streak. And I think the most troubling part of that is that 2 of those losses were to Brooklyn, who's not really in a position where they're super competitive or going all out to win games. So that was very difficult for the Rockets to lose 2 of their last 4 to a team that's out of contention. This losing streak has dropped Houston down to 3rd place in the West after they had been in 2nd and ahead of Memphis for a pretty long stretch. So a little bit of a bump in the road here for the Rockets. And if people may have noticed this last night, I was kind of laughing a little bit because they really collapsed against the Nets in the game that they lost last night. They were up by, I think, 4 or 6 with about a minute or so left, and they took 2 really quick threes. Jalen Green and Reed Shepherd both took threes with really early in the shot clock, and I swear Ime Udoka was ready to go out on the floor and choke somebody. If you had seen the look on his face.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is they're still up by 4 with 10 seconds left. So even though they had a couple mental mistakes that made their coach be on the verge of a meltdown, they're still in great position to win the game up 4 with 10 seconds. Brooklyn inbounds, makes a 3, cuts it to 1, and then the Rockets throw away a pass, and then D'Angelo Russell makes another 3. They score 6 points in 4 seconds and win the game in unbelievable fashion. So that was a really rough way for the Rockets to cap this 0-4 stretch that they've had over the last 7 days. And then stock up, they switched spots in the standings with the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm going with the Grizzlies as the stock up. They went 3-0. They had a really good win, close win against the Rockets last week. Then they won in Milwaukee, and then they just beat the Spurs pretty handily in Memphis. So the Grizzlies now are 34-16 in 2nd place in the West. They were a 2 seed 2 years in a row prior to last season when they had a ton of injuries. And now they're already back up to that level, even though they've had a lot of injuries and John Morant's missed some games here and there. But the Grizzlies are the team that has, I think, improved their stock a lot. I mean, I could have gone with the Lakers as well. They had a really good stretch, had a really good win against the Clippers. But for now, we're going to wait to see when Luka Doncic makes his debut. And that's it for Western Conference Wednesday. I feel like the Western Conference Wednesday has really gotten even more interesting over the last couple months of the season with what's happened lately.
I'm trying to find it right now, and of course, when I need to call it back up, I don't see it. But to your point, it's interesting you bring up that team. Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know if you saw, I saw a graphic that had like his last 8 or 10 games. They're all like
He's
above
been great.
30 points. It's insane numbers of blocks and all that. Do I dare say, Jim, it's no longer just Jean Morant?
Yeah, and he's their all-star this year too, Jaren Jackson Jr. He's at the point where I think among that level of player, the guy that can make the all-star game a couple times, he's become one of the most underrated players in the league. So I think people definitely are starting to give him more credit and attention. If you think about it, for some reasons out of his control, for some reasons in his control, John Morant has been out a ton the last couple of years, but yet the Grizzlies have remained competitive, and I think Jackson is a big reason for that. So credit to him for the kind of career in the last few seasons that he's put together.
All right. Well, sir, there it is, our Western Conference Wednesday. I'm telling you, I'd like to say I know somebody to get you in, but I just don't. I honestly don't.
You know what though, Gus?
Look, look, there's you would love this. There's media everywhere. Behind us, we have the international section. ESPN and Pat McAfee shows over there as well. Aaron Summers is hanging out. We're going to go interview Kay Adams here in a little bit. But more importantly, I don't know if you can see past our guy Doug Tatum here, but there is the section where Bronny, the whole paper towel people, Drew Brees is going to be over there. They give wings out. Oh, and I would love to know, as a New Yorker, where do you rate their wings?
I guess we'll never find out, will we?
Yeah, maybe I'll bring a box for you over there, man.
Yeah, there you go.
Fun.
There you go.
It'd be interesting. I know the NBA. Do they have, like, for the finals? Do they have radio or something like that? He's right here, Doug. I can ask him.
I would love to experience the finals someday, Gus. I really don't know, but
it's a little different when we get together in the off season for Vegas for Summer League. Although Summer League is sort of like this,
Yeah, Summer League is growing. I still don't think it's anywhere close to what you're experiencing and that kind of thing. But yeah.
No doubt, man. Well, Jim, as always, appreciate it. And we will talk again on Friday, the day after the NBA trade deadline. We'll recap all of that, plus this Nuggets game, and get you ready for Saturday's game at Sacramento. Until then, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Gus. Looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see what we have to talk about on Friday.
Yeah, no doubt. Should be fun. Give Jim a follow, Jim Eichenhofer over Jim_Eichenhofer over on X, and of course, Pelicans.com. And if there is anything to do with our team, it'll be on there as well. So go check that out. Until then, we'll see you on Friday on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.